Hello everyone, my name is Boa-Ventura. I'm a consultant for the Renaissance Entrepreneurship Center. This is our session 2A of our class on marketing, sales, and public relations. On this session, we're going to focus on ecosystem mapping and more precisely your business ecosystem, whether you are just starting your business or it's already going ahead in full strength. This session is for you. I will start by sharing my screen. So we're going to talk about ecosystem mapping, who surrounds your audience. And I'm naming this, it takes a village, who's in yours, right? You know the old saying, it takes a village. Well, who's in yours? Who's in your business? This video works with the worksheet number 2, which you will get access to. And the goals of session 2, so not only 2A, which you're doing today, but also the next one, 2B, the goals for session 2 as a whole are ecosystem mapping, who surrounds your audience. This is what we'll be talking about today. We're going to talk about partner types, strategic allies, influencers, referral partners. We'll continue with the value exchange, the so-called WIFM, what's in it for me. And then I will ask you to check out your own ecosystem map. In fact, we are going to start doing this exercise today, but this will be also addressed in your worksheet too. You'll receive some guidance to do so. So the goals for this specific session 2A we're doing now on this video are the ecosystem mapping, who surrounds your audience. We will take care of the rest on a later session. So ecosystem mapping, who surrounds your audience, is the topic for today. And really the journey on this video, it really is to see the forest, to name the rings, and then to spot the bridges. We're still following a very kind of Lord of the Rings lingo, like on our last session about story frameworks. So let me clarify what I mean by this. See the forest in the sense of shift from this idea of my business to this idea of my ecosystem, which will be very beneficial if you can do this shift of thought about your business. Name the rings, identify who truly surrounds your audience. And then finally, spot the bridges, really identify those connection points. Those are fundamental. So we'll talk about this as we go, but this is really our journey during this video. The most important idea, if you don't take anything else out of this video today, is that no business grows alone. You need others, right? And you can't really see them as your vendors, for example. Your vendors are really your partners. So from funnel to ecosystem is really something I want to talk about because it's very important. We all hear about, of course, sales funnels, marketing funnels, which usually go like this, from attracting to engaging to converting and to finally retaining your customers, right? So it's a funnel. You start with the audience that you're addressing, the demographics that your business has, and then you engage some of them, and then maybe you convert some of them, and then we'll retain just part of those that you converted, right? So it's a funnel, and the number of people, of course, from the attract to the retain stages decreases, right? So you're kind of pushing people down, right? In the case of an ecosystem, the situation is this. It's a web of connections. You've got opinions, you have, of course, trust, communities, you've got everything. And so a lot of people talk about a forest, this network as a forest. And you saw that on the previous slide. So whereas the marketing really pushes people down in the sense that you kind of start with a certain number of potential customers and you end up with, of course, a much lower number, right? In the case, is this really what happens these days with everything that's going on with especially social media marketing, all of this? Maybe not, maybe what you have, the situation you have is much more like this, right? Where in fact, instead of pushing people down, your marketing could actually and should expand organically because people communicate, right? And these networks are expanding. So I really want you to think of an ecosystem, the fact that an ecosystem is multi-directional, right? It's very important. And so your marketing becomes stronger when you see yourself as part of this web. So instead of seeing that very limited funnel, let's start thinking about ecosystems with several agents, individuals, organizations involved. How can you define an ecosystem represented here by this web? Well, a business ecosystem is the network of several things, of people, of organizations, of touch points, right? And really all of these people, organizations, and touch points, they all shape your customer's journey. From that moment where they see your Google ad until the moment where they follow that landing page, they land on your website, they go to your shop page, and they do that transaction, and then they go to Google or Yelp to say how amazing your product or your services are, right? So the business ecosystem is really the network of all these things. And your power is understanding how these relationships interact so that, of course, you can benefit your business from that knowledge. Okay, it's really important to understand what's happening there in this ecosystem. Okay, so let's look at, I've been talking about ecosystems, and you may be thinking, well, give me an example of one. What exactly is this? Well, we saw an ecosystem as a web of nodes. Okay, let's think of a topic, homelessness, pretty important topic these days in this country. Well, an ecosystem could be represented by something like this. You've got the homeless shelter, you've got the health department, you've got the local hospital system, you've got the city planning office, you've got the youth center, school district, food pantry, faith-based organizations, you've got local nonprofits, child care centers, primary care clinics. So all of these agents, organizations are part of this ecosystem. So this primary care clinic could strategize how to strengthen ties, fill gaps, and increase efficiency. This connection here between the school district and the health department, measure the quality of these connections and interactions. See which groups and organizations are connected to each other, right? So here's a quite complex ecosystem illustrating this topic of homelessness and how all the organizations and communities are, in fact, interrelated. So let's see something a little bit more concrete in the sense that it's probably closer to a situation of a small business, a local coffee shop. This local coffee shop, the nodes on the diagram might be the customers of the coffee shop, and they're not all the same, right? That coffee shop probably has the regulars, the people that go by just before they hit the road to go to work. They can have maybe students, right? That study, that spend long hours at the coffee shop using that Wi-Fi and those outlets and just working away. Same thing with remote workers, right? All these are customers and they have different needs, but they're all customers. They're core to any coffee shop, any local coffee shop, right? And you have the suppliers, the local roaster, coffee roaster, the bakeries. You've got the collaborators, the local artists maybe that the coffee shop has a partnership with to create posters and paintings that decorate the walls of the local coffee shop and that are maybe for sale. Maybe there is a commission that the coffee shop gets when each of these paintings are sold. So again, this is an ecosystem. Maybe there's event hosts, right? Maybe somebody is using the local coffee shop for a meetup type of event, French teaching of small business owners, mentorship, whatever it is, right? Multipliers, these are the reviewers, these are the influencers, right? All these people are actually talking about this local coffee shop and in that sense multiplying the impact in attracting others to come to the local coffee shop. So all of these are part of an ecosystem. A chamber of commerce, for example, can be also part of this ecosystem of a local coffee shop. So you've got an example here in how this local coffee shop would represent the network we saw, the web of nodes, right? And we saw this now the example of the homelessness topic and how the several organizations at the state level, at the city level, can interact with each other. So all those elements we just saw, they shape the coffee shop success. So it's not only about sales, right? In fact, those sales very much are derivatives of these elements, of everybody that's involved, of all the partners, all the clients, of course, the influencers, etc. Talking about the coffee shop. So very important for a business to really understand their ecosystem. So at this time, I'd like you to take a moment, and I keep saying this is a video, you can pause the video, right? Take a moment and think about your business and who are the obvious players in your business. Who are your clients? Who are your vendors? Who are your peers? Maybe who are even your competitors? Maybe you've got a Starbucks just around the corner. So important to have all this information, right? And who are the less visible ones, the people who influence your clients before they reach you? This is very important, right? Maybe there's others who are, in a way, sending you clients and that are not that apparent. And again, I can give you the example of meetup groups that specifically may indicate on the meetup page where they meet. And very often this is in local coffee shops, right? So there's less visible players that are also important for your business, or there may be. Now, I've been talking about ecosystems, but I might as well substantiate why this matters to you as business. Well, because relationships are the same as reach, right? So it's very important you do not exist in a vacuum, right? Relationships are the same as reach. No need to marketing in isolation anymore, right? Because you tap into existing trust networks, and you remember how trust is so important, right, in marketing, and that's so much more effective than cold outreach, right? Nobody likes cold outreach. So much more interesting if you are familiar with your ecosystem and you are working together with everybody that is part of your ecosystem, that you don't see them, for example, your vendors as just your suppliers as just vendors, but as your real partners, actual partners. Remember this guy from our class 1A. It's all about trust. Trust leads to clarity, and clarity leads to that I like you. So let's make sure that by tapping into existing trust networks, you really take advantage of the relationships in your business ecosystem. And I wanted to include this quote here: your network is your net worth. It's sort of a cliche. This is first said by Porter Gale. It's sort of a cliche, but not really, because if you think about it, in an economy of trust, really, your currency are the relationships. The relationships are your true currency, right? So let's unravel the layers. We're talking about the ecosystem. Let's unravel these layers. There's the audience, the direct partners of yours, the influencers that are not as direct, right? The communities, and then finally the whole context of the market, including competitors, as we'll see. So let's look at each one of these 5 layers of a business ecosystem. And of course, you can find other authors and a lot of literature where instead of 5, there's 10, there's 1,000, okay? But we'll just keep it simple and look at these 5. So the core layer here at the very center that you see here in yellow is your audience. So it's really, really important for you to know who your audience is. And again, for those of you who are just have maybe a very sketchy idea of the business you want to have, it's equally important. Find out who your audience really is. So define them by demographics, age, gender, their pain points, their motivations. So define that audience really well, get to know them really well. Then you've got the next layer, and that's the support layer. So this is the direct relationships that you have, the direct partners. So this is really the first ring of connection. It's your suppliers, your collaborators, your service providers, everybody without whom you couldn't even function. And that's why I keep saying, do not see them as vendors, see them as partners. And you may ask, what do you mean exactly by that? I mean, simple things like we are in the holidays, Thanksgiving and Christmas are coming up. Think of writing them a note, a thank you note, displaying, I mean, really showing your gratitude for the work they do, okay? Simple acts like this really strengthen a relationship between partners. Or then formalize it. See how, in terms of a quid pro quo, you both can collaborate. Maybe they can give you a discount on their products in exchange for something that you can offer them, right? So don't think of them as vendors, think of them as partners. That's what I mean. The influence layer comes next, and these are the indirect voices. And these are very important because they're influencing your potential customers and your customers. And it's not obvious that you always have direct access to them. That's why, because they're called the indirect voices, the influence layer. What I mean by this, they're really the gatekeepers of trust. These are the bloggers, the associations, the mentors, or community leaders. A blog can make or destroy a local coffee shop that's just started, I don't know, in Oakland or Berkeley, right? It can be totally destroyed by a blogger who has enough a blogger who writes about local coffee shops and has enough trust and reputation from the community that people actually trust what's written there, so they can make or destroy or kill a business, right? So, and your audience listens to these influencers, but you may not talk to them directly. Maybe you don't have the ability to talk to them directly, but you can certainly online see what is being said about your business. So very important to also listen to and list who are these indirect voices that can impact your business. And I don't mean it in a pejorative way. It does not have to be a negative impact. What is important is that you know who they are, okay? And then there's the community layer comes next. The communities amplify your story. These are the neighborhood associations. These are the online groups. These are the professional networks, the alumni circles. This layer can also amplify the story of your business. So you better know who are these communities that are actually impacting your business. To get back to a very simple example of this is, for example, I am part of a meetup group of French conversation, and we meet at a particular coffee shop in Berkeley. I wonder sometimes if that coffee shop knows of this fact. Probably they do, because they hear people speak this strange language every so often, right? But it would be beneficial for this coffee shop to actually know this and maybe have see this small community that we are part of this group of French conversation in Meetup as a partner, because we are giving them business, right? So it's a simple example. So it's a fertile ground for organic growth, the community layer, right? And finally, we have the competition layer, or, as more often it's called the market context. It includes the trends, the competitors, the platforms, right? So, and yes, competitors belong in your ecosystem. May sound bizarre, but it's actually important. keep your friend close and your enemy closer. That's the line of thought. And other reasons are because your competitors are educating your audience, right? They set benchmarks, right? If I have a local coffee shop that's 2 doors from Starbucks, I better know what I can offer that is different from that Starbucks, right? So Starbucks definitely set benchmarks. Maybe the products they offer as far as bakery are not that fresh and don't look very artisanal. So from the fact that I know this, I can now use this in my business, right? To make some changes to really be competitive, right? And also, I have to say, partnership beats paranoia. So instead of being paranoid because there's this other grocery around the corner, why not consider even a partnership with them, right? So competition layer, very important to have into account trends, competitors, and platforms, right? It's everything, including competitors, is called the market context, and this outer layer, okay? Very important also to understand it. So right now I wanted you to take a moment and think about the ecosystem of your business, right? So do you notice patterns? And if you haven't, because you have not been thinking so far in terms of ecosystem, start observing. Social media is a gold mine of clues. Reddit is a gold mine of clues. So start seeing if there's patterns. Focus on things like, where does your audience hang out, online and offline? Do they mention or tag? Who do they mention or tag, rather? And what brands do they trust already, right? So all this is really vital information, instrumental information for you to really use for your business, right? Where your audience hangs out, specifically online, I can tell you there's lots of charts out there that assess according to, for example, age, where are people online, what kind of format of information do they prefer, and when, what are hours of the day, right? After over 65-year-olds are on the computer like at 6 a.m. reading the news, and no surprise for anybody that the 20-year-olds and 15 to 20 are on TikTok, are on video, YouTube, and until 2 a.m. before they go to sleep. That's when the 65-year-olds wake up and go to the computer and consume information in very different platforms than YouTube and TikTok, right? So all this is very important to know. The information is available online. And also, who do they mention or tag, and what brands do they trust already? Okay, so take a moment. Again, you can pause this video and you can write your notes with a old paper and pencil, or then use a Word doc, whatever you prefer, and write those things down. And if you have not noticed patterns, start observing, okay? And this observation includes online observation. But I'll press on. Mapping your ecosystem helps identify where energy flows and where it's missing. Maybe it's on those circles the rings, as we call them. There are some layers where the energy is flowing really well, and others where it's missing. So maybe you need to focus your attention on those rings. Let's look at an example. In this case, it's a fictitious example. It's a yoga studio. This logo, by the way, was done in half a second with Canva. And this is an AI-generated image on Canva as well. And just as an example, the core audience in this case of a yoga studio in general are, of course, health-conscious adults, right? Influencers could be nutritionists, physical therapists, right? That can talk about a local yoga studio, and again, they may really help the business or they could kill it if the reviews and the articles about it are bad, right? The collaborators can be wellness brands, could be local cafes, obviously offering vegetarian and other health conscious meals, right? And the communities could be meetup groups, retreat organizers. So again, here's a very, very likely ecosystem of a yoga studio. Here's another example, and this is a real one. We talked about this charity water, right, that Scott started. And in this case, the core audience are the donors, the volunteers, the allies are local businesses and media, the influencers are community leaders, so quite different from the yoga studio, right? So this is the ecosystem, a possible one for the charity water nonprofit. And the platforms for them, social media, events, newsletters. Okay, so quite different from the previous example. This one being a real example. Of course, I don't know if Scott says that this is their ecosystem, but this is what I would assume is very likely to be probably a very close ecosystem to what they actually have. Again, I want to fish out again this topic of who influences your potential customers before you come along, right? That's very important. So who does your customer talk to or trust before they reach you as a brand, as a business? Very important for you to identify that. If you identify that person and you build a bridge with that person, right, you just shorten your sales cycle because, of course, this is a business or an organization that is inspiring your customers to then go to you. So this is how you've already shortened your sales cycle by identifying that person or that organization. Okay. Who supports after you? That's also important for you to know who supports after you. What happens after someone buys from you, right? Who else helps them succeed? Can you collaborate with those follow-up providers to create continuity and better experiences? So the before and after that meeting with you as the brand, as the business, are equally important to have into account in your ecosystem. So it would like you to take a moment right now, pause that video, but before you do, let's just remember again these the rings, right? Starting from the core, the audience, then your direct partners. This is your first ring of connection, right? Then the influencers, the communities, and finally the market context, which again includes your competitors. Okay, so draw your own business ecosystem. Grab paper or maybe Canva if you're comfortable with Canva and just start sketching it out. Draw your customer in the center. Maybe on the side, identify that customer very well, the demographics, etc., the interests, the pain points, right? And then add those 3 or 4 rings outwards. Start labeling who surrounds them, the people, the organizations, the touch points. And again, very important from the moment where you have this visual clarity, all this in a diagram, you can see where your business is maybe weak and where it's thriving, right? So for instance, imagine that you are weak on the influencers. You don't really know who is impacting your customers' opinions, bloggers, etc. And you don't know very well what communities are related to your business. So if you are weak in these rings, then you need to flesh them out, right? Step back, look at your map. Where are your clusters of strength? Maybe it's your direct partners, right? And where are the gaps, the rings that look kind of empty, where you haven't identified the main agents? Those gaps reveal untapped partnerships. So that's where your attention should focus, okay? So I'm encouraging you in the end to really look at your business as mycelium kind of network. And what characterizes the mycelium type of networks is that the roots, the networks of connection are underground. So they're invisible, but they're life-giving. When one part thrives, the nutrients flow everywhere. This image here illustrates, by the way, also AI generated. That's what partnership-based growth looks like, where everybody is thriving and nutrients are flowing everywhere. Okay, so try to see your business as this mycelium kind of network. Let's look at an example. We talked earlier about a ecosystem where I told you about a local cafe that a coffee shop that could, for example, partner with local artists. Well, it turns out that there is a real case of the Aroma Coffee Shop in San Rafael. And what happened was that they partnered with a nearby art school to display student work monthly. And so it was really cool because every week these paintings you see here along this wall, it's a very, very long coffee shop. It's perfect for this kind of thing, almost looks like a gallery. And it got artwork all around. So these were paintings by the students of a nearby art school. Okay. So obviously the clients liked it. The parents loved it. It was a way to attract the parents. And there's a lot of students work represented here. So the result, new customers, community buzz, media coverage, because everybody thought it was so cool. So the local media outlets really documented this. And all this came from one creative ecosystem link. That link, which would be represented on the map of the nodes between the Cafe Aroma and the local art school. Okay, so this is the logo of the Aroma. So this is a real case, and the photo is from their website. So take a moment and reserve sort of 1 hour for this exercise. And I know you've already started mapping your ecosystem, but now I really want you to take 1 hour for this. And you'll find guidance about this exercise on your worksheet number 2. Map your ecosystem and think about what's one connection or relationship you've underestimated that, if nurtured, could transform your business reach. Okay, so maybe you've already started to map your ecosystem. I want you to now look at it and see where those rings may be weak in terms of identifying the agents, the people, the organizations within each of these rings, right? So if you see this, if there's one connection on the relationship you've underestimated, if nurtured, could it transform your business reach? Okay, so focus there. And I need to press on, but yeah, reserve about 1 hour for this exercise and find it on worksheet 2. And write it down and then put it on the wall of your office, because it will be a reminder that those are the partners in your ecosystem where you really have to focus, or this is the ring on your ecosystem that you're not so familiar with. Maybe you're really not so familiar with the influencers that can impact your ecosystem, your business, right? So put it on the wall of your office so that it inspires you. So the key takeaways of this session we covered today are really, this session was about ecosystem mapping, who surrounds your audience, right? It takes a village. Who's in yours? who is the audience in your village, right? But key takeaways were that ecosystem thinking, it's a different type of thinking, replaces isolation with connection. So that was really our first takeaway. And that growth happens through people, not posts. I can't tell you how many people I know that say, I've been posting so much on Facebook and I don't have any traction. My business is not growing, because it really has to happen through people. If you're posting about me, meaning your brand, you're not doing a great job. You need to think about the content that really speaks to your audience, right? And you need to include them and engage them through your posts. That's your way to grow your business. So growth happens through people, not through posts. And then that mapping of your diagram really reveals where your influence already lives and where your caveats are. So where you need to really spend some time in trying to identify patterns, in identifying people and organizations, and really devote a little bit more time to develop those relationships. Next session will be, session 2 is all about mapping your ecosystem, right? But the next topic will be, we've covered this, so I grayed it out because we covered it today, who surrounds your audience. And then we have the partner types, strategic allies, influencers, referral partners, value exchange, the so-called WIFM, what's in it for me. And finally, we'll have the sketch out of your own ecosystem map, which you've already started, but it's part of your worksheet too. With that said, I thank you. Thank you for watching. Here's a representation of the rings of your business ecosystem, so you don't forget. And yes, it takes a village. Who's in yours? Thank you again.